everybody. Welcome back to the Dear Future Pioneers podcast. My name is Carissa, and I'm going to be your host. And today's episode is a little bit bittersweet because today we are recording the last actual informational episode of the podcast, but we are ending it on an amazing topic with two really special guests. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about the orientation leaders. And today I'm joined by Ange and Grace to give me a little bit of information about the program. So thank you guys for being here with me today.
Thanks for having us. We're so excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited as well. Okay, so before we kind of dive into everything, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves to the camera and to the people that are watching, and then we can go into the program.
All right. Hi, I'm Ange. I'm a senior psychology major with a sociology minor from Albany, New York, and I've been part of the orientation program for the past 3 years, and last year I was the co-chair of the program as well.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm a senior nursing student from Hamilton, New Jersey. I've been a part of the orientation program for 2 years.
Yeah, so they have had a lot of experiences within the orientation program, so they'll definitely have a lot to talk about. So you guys will get the whole behind-the-scenes look of orientation. And a little special thing about having this be the last episode of this project is because when you guys come to Sacred Heart, if you choose to come to Sacred Heart, these are going to be the first people that you really interact with and like that first experience you have as a student when you come to school. So you get to know them a little bit better and they will get to know you when you step on campus. So nice little full circle moment there. So before we get into personalized experiences and everything, I like to go over kind of what the basic definition is of the program based on our favorite Sacred Heart website. So the Sacred Heart website defines the orientation leaders as a select group of undergraduates to assist with implementing the orientation program, as well as the traditional transition events that take place throughout the summer and fall semesters. So the orientation leaders possess knowledge about Sacred Heart University, acquired through training and experience, and are skillful at sharing information with new students and their families. So a lot of background information goes into becoming an orientation leader, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I wanted to hear how you guys would describe orientation leaders if like someone were to ask you kind of like in our school, just seeing the program being like, oh, what is an orientation leader?
Mm-hmm. I feel like orientation leaders are the people on campus who really just stand out about how much they love Sacred Heart and their passion for it and their want and drive to help new students get accumulated to the campus and to help with the transitional period because it's so stressful. It's really a lot. And they're people that are super helpful, super approachable, friendly, sweet. They're just amazing people.
Yeah, I also think that orientation leaders are kind of those first people that you meet on campus that kind of make you feel like an actual college student. You know, their orientation is the first time that you're kind of on campus as a Sacred Heart student. And so I think that their role plays a huge part in starting that transition from being a high school student to being a college student on a college campus, like on your own. And so I think that they're a great resource to have on campus within the first few weeks. But also they're there to make you excited to start your career here.
Yeah, I agree. Both of those descriptions were really like in depth because I feel like too, while you have like this select group and, you know, you see everybody waving at you, super excited to be there, you really are giving them that first taste of like what their next 4 years are going to look like. And a lot of people like talk about first impressions like hardcore. And I feel like the orientation leaders are that first impression of the school, whether it be like you have the student ambassadors who give the overall perspective what the school looks like, but those orientation leaders are really giving you your personalized kind of look of what like your college career is going to be looking like versus like an overall examination of the school, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
That's kind of like how I see it. But I feel like with the orientation leaders, a lot of us like, or the students that decide to apply and become an orientation leader have a lot of their decision behind like how their orientation went. So what was your like first impression of the orientation leaders when you had your orientation, and how would you describe like how your orientation went?
For me, I definitely kind of had a bit of a different experience with orientation. Mine was the day after my high school graduation, and we had to be there at like 8 a.m. So me and my mom drove up that morning, and I was miserable. Like, I didn't want to be there. I was super, super nervous. I didn't know anybody from my high school that was coming to Sacred Heart, and I just, like, didn't want to be there. And so, you know, you drive into campus, and all the orientation leaders are at the welcome gate, like, screaming, cheering, jumping around. And I was like, Mom, I want to go home. Like, take me home. This was a mistake. I'm not going to be, like, I don't want to be here. And it's funny to look back on that because obviously here I am now being part of the orientation program from the other end. So it's definitely interesting to see kind of how throughout the day I kind of got more comfortable and I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. Like I'm just being a little bit overdramatic. And then it just kind of turned into something that I really loved.
Yeah.
My experience was I saw the orientation leaders like at welcome gate, like cheering, screaming, and I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I was like, this is awful. And I was like, those people are crazy. That's like, I would never put myself through something like that. And then I did for 3 years. But I thought they were super, like, even though I thought it was like a little like embarrassing, I was like, ugh, but it still made me feel like super welcome. And they all just had such a great uplifting energy. It just made you want to get excited to come to Sacred Heart. And it really did. Like they gave you all this information about just like, you know, it's a lot of information. It's a very like long day and everything, but they were able to really like make you excited and you were able to bond with people in your group, which I loved. And just to get more comfortable with being on campus and seeing familiar faces and getting used to like all the new people.
Yeah, they can definitely be very overwhelming within the first couple of hours. And it's a lot, especially if you're nervous or you're just kind of not sure what to expect. It can be a lot at once, like driving into campus and then everybody's so excited to have you there. But if you embrace that energy that they're giving off, it's definitely a much better experience because it just shows you how much people love Sacred Heart and how it's just gonna be a great 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like at the end of the day, I feel like the more like in your face kind of rah that the orientation leaders like show off is very like welcoming when you think about it in the back, because like imagine like driving in and there's like no welcoming kind of committee there. Like when you're on the other end of it and you're like Andrew was saying, like, oh my God, why are they screaming? It's so early. Like this is so embarrassing. But when I think about it, I'm like, wow, this was like such a nice, like warm, welcoming way for me to come into campus for the first time. And like, it kind of feels like they really want me to be here. It's not just like them showing up being like, oh, like I have to show a bunch of new freshmen around and like get them acclimated and everything. I kind of had a very similar experience as Grace did with orientation. I remember move-in day a lot more vividly than I did orientation, but I do remember being like super nervous because like I never really like have been away from home that much, especially like growing up. I never did like sleepovers or anything. So having to come to school for the first time, like being away from my parents, even though like they were literally in the same mile radius as us, because we did the overnight stay before that got all changed. So having to share a room with someone and like having to kind of like do the goodbye, I like vividly remember them pulling up to like 𝚒𝚒𝚗𝚒 and like someone leaning into the car and being like, okay, quick goodbye now, we gotta get moving. I was like, oh, we're moving now. I literally left my pillow in the car too because I was so frazzled. Like I had to go back and get it. That's a whole different story. But I remember like being so nervous, but then as like the day progressed, like you said, like meeting my orientation leader, like I remember her name, shout out Devin. She was like one of the reasons why I was so like intrigued about the program, and like the way that she had my group really get like familiar with each other, so it wasn't like as awkward as it could have been.
Yeah.
Was like really fun. And like driving home that day, I was like, I'm so excited to go to school. I was like texting all my friends because I was the first one who did orientation because ours was early.
Like, it was early.
In comparison to some other schools. I was like, you guys have nothing to be worried about. Orientation is so much fun, blah, 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 blah. My friends were like, you're crazy. I was like, no, I had the best time. Don't even worry about it. But yeah, I think it's such an interesting like way to look at the orientation leaders beforehand and like the foreshadowing of like, that's gonna be you. My dad, literally, we were driving in as they're like all like waving and stuff, and he's the type of person that'll honk the horn and like wave at everyone. I'm like, please stop. And he's like, Carissa, maybe that'll be you one day. I'm like, funny, no. Well, who knows, you know? So kind of going off of that with having your orientation, having that experience and seeing the applications for OL come out in that following year, you did it all 3 years. You only did 2, Grace, right? So, Ange, when you were a freshman going into sophomore year, and I know it was a little different for us because of COVID, can you, like, walk me through, like, your process of wanting to apply for orientation leaders and, like, why you wanted to do that?
So I knew like, even though I just said in the beginning, I was like so embarrassed by the orientation leaders being so excited, literally that night, I was like, I have to do this job. I was like, this is going to be so much fun. This is the one thing I know I really want to get involved in this campus. Like, I knew that kind of within the first, 8 hours of me being at the schools that I really wanted to do that. So applications came out February of 2020. So that was our spring semester freshman year. And so I grabbed the application and I applied, and they basically just ask you questions to gauge who you are as a person, what you're involved in, why you want to be an orientation leader, what you think it means to be an orientation leader. And then our campus got shut down because of COVID. So I was like, oh, I really want this job. What am I going to do? And then we had a Zoom interview instead. And I remember my microphone wasn't working, and I was oh my God. And then I was so upset because I was like, this is the one thing I really want to do, because my mic wasn't working. And I remember I had my phone next to me, and I was like, can I use my phone? I was like, can I call you on this? And they're like, yes, call us. And I did that. And then I was like, oh, that was awful. And then I was like, I didn't get that. And I was like, well, move on to my next adventure. But then they sent out an email and it's like, oh, congrats. And I was like, yes. So
Yes.
But it was exciting. And then for reapplication, it's a little bit of a different process, because if you want to reapply, they're going to ask you kind of like, what would you improve on? What was the situation that you did really well in? Questions like that. So it's a little bit of a different process, but first application is just kind of gauging who you are and what you have to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually applied my freshman year for my sophomore year. And I kind of put off picking up one of the applications because I was like, why do I feel like I want to do this? Like, I kind of didn't have the best time at orientation. Like, I was kind of really nervous, and, I felt like I didn't get as much out of it as I should have, even though throughout the day, like, I really did start to feel more comfortable and I was super excited. I was like, well, I wasn't always that excited for it, so I shouldn't pick up an application. And I ended up picking up an application super last minute, and I spent hours working on it, and then campus got shut down, interviews were moved on to Zoom, and I was so nervous, and I didn't end up getting it. And I was so upset, but I was like, you know what, it's okay, I'll find something else. Well, there's always next year. So next year came around, and I was like, worst case scenario, they say no again. Like, that's the worst that can happen. And I got my application like the day that they opened. I spent so long on the application, and the interview went really well. Same thing as Ange said, they were kind of just asking why you want to be an orientation leader, what you feel like an orientation leader's role is on campus, and just kind of about yourself. And then we got the acceptance letters, and I was so nervous to open it. I was like, I can't open it on campus. I have to be in my room. And so I walked all the way to my room with the letter, and I finally opened it, and I was so excited. And then I had the best time as an orientation leader. And then the following year, I was like, I have to do it again, or at least try to do it again. And so same thing, the reapplication process was kind of more so about your experience as an OL and how you can improve and what you think you did well.
Yeah. And did you, from the viewpoint of reapplying, do you think that was a good idea to kind of see the reaction of being an OL when you wanted to do it again? I feel like that's very interesting to have two different interview processes based on if you've done it already or if you're doing it for the first time, because it is good to get to know somebody as a person, but say you really wanted to do it again, how did you guys feel doing that application process again?
I think the reapplication process was definitely a different experience because they already know you. So right. It's not more, it's not you selling yourself, being like, this is who I am and this is what I can bring to the table. It's them being like, we know what you can bring to the table. How do you think we can improve? And how do you think, what do you think you did well?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of difficult in that aspect because they know what you do well. And so it's definitely different than the original application, I'd say.
Yeah, 100%.
I found it a little more intimidating, honestly, because Grace just said, they know you, they know what you're good at and what maybe you need to improve on, which is fine. And you also have to try to make yourself stand out in front of the other applicants, like the other people that are reapplying, your friends, people that were really great orientation leaders. How do you make yourself stand out among that crowd? And with them knowing everyone so well, that was definitely difficult. But in that process, what we had to do for our my reapplication, going into sophomore, junior year, we had to do a video submission. And I was like, what can I do for this to make myself stand out among people that reapplied? And I was like, I'm going to do a music video. So I did a music video to Golden by Harry Styles because it has OL in it. I changed up the lyrics, and I was like, this is the most embarrassing thing I've ever putting out, the most embarrassing form of media ever. But I put it in the world for student life, so they have blackmail now against me. But yeah, so there's just like little things like that to make yourself stand out, and then hopefully put yourself, like, if you really want to do it again, you have to, like, maybe you got to do something embarrassing, but if it's worth it.
Yeah, honestly, maybe they do that for everything on campus where you have to reapply, where it's like kind of that way. Like, I would feel like the student ambassadors might have to do that, but
yeah,
I don't know. But I feel like I agree with the intimidating part, but to like give a positive spin on it, it really shows like who wants to do it and who's just doing it to do it, if that makes sense. Like, of course, when people apply, reapply, they had a good time. So obviously, the program's doing something right. But you want to have a good group of like individuals who are really there to benefit the students coming in a way. I don't like, everybody that steps through the door obviously has really good intentions. But I think it's cool that, they take it from like, what can we improve on? Like, is there anything you think you could improve on? And like, how can those two coexist for like another round of orientation?
Or even like new ideas you might be able to bring to the table, any like bonding ideas you might have, any things like that. Because it's always good to have like the creative new ideas flowing in kind of like whenever among whoever.
Yeah. So, okay, we go through, you guys applied, get accepted onto the team or offered a position. So coming into the summer with the orientation program really being kind of like, at least the last 2 years being more of like a 2-week time frame for actual orientation, and then you have that week of training. So what kind of does orientation look like from the viewpoint of like an OL? So once you get onto campus and like doing that training, how would you like describe that process going?
I'd say right from getting onto campus in either the end of May or early June, we hit the ground running. We get there, and if you would never think that you could get so close to like 40 individuals in a day, but it's actually kind of insane because you go through that first day of training. It's a lot about like teamwork and just bonding and getting to know everybody. And I remember this past summer, one of the new OLs looked at me and she was like, I'm really nervous. Like, there's so many of us. I'm not going to be able to remember everybody's names. It's going to take me weeks. And I was like, give it to tomorrow. I swear you'll know everybody. Like, you really will. And so it's definitely interesting because it's a good balance of having fun and getting to know everybody, but also putting in the work to prepare for all the incoming freshmen to come and make sure that they have a great time for their orientation day and their families as well. So it's definitely, it can be difficult at first to find a balance between having fun and getting to know everybody, but also doing the work that we need to do to make sure that all the people that are coming to campus are getting the information they need, are getting excited to be able to come onto campus and stuff like that.
So yeah, basically you hit the ground running and just start bonding and training. But the first like few days, that's really like information heavy to make sure you have the foundation of how to be a proper leader, all the information you need to know about the campus, bonding with the team itself. And outside of bonding, there's so much fun to it. Like this past year we went kayaking, we went to a Yankee game. Like, we do fun events like that as well. That's not just so work heavy. And like Grace said, it's really amazing how in like a couple days, all of a sudden you act like it really feels like you've known all 40 strangers for years. It feels like you've just known them forever and that you're just so close already. And you really meet like your closest friends in the program. And yeah, but there's, long days, long nights. It's exhausting. It's tiring, but it's very rewarding because you want to be there and you don't feel like tired necessarily just because you're so like energized by the group around you because everyone just has such great energy.
Yeah, it's really cool because I think there are eight orientation days, and so by day 2 or 3, you're exhausted. You're early mornings, long days, but it's really cool to see how the whole group kind of comes together and can like uplift each other and bring the energy. You know, if you're not feeling well or you're super tired and stuff like that, like everybody else kind of gets in there and they're like, come on, like we're here to help everybody, like help all the freshmen. Like it's going to be such a great time. So it's kind of cool to see how the whole team comes together in that way.
And at the end of our days this year, we implemented this thing called PR, which is positive roundup. And at the end of our orientation days, we would go around a big group and be like, all right, who stood out to you? Who stood out to you today? What orientation leader really went above and beyond? And we'd shout some people out and be like, this person did great because they had great energy around the parents and blah, blah, blah. So it was good to reward and kind of like, you know, show that someone went really above and beyond today, really represented what an orientation leader is by just always putting their best foot forward and, you know, being like just amazing people always.
Yeah, because like it's also like an experience for the orientation leaders, even though everybody is there to like give the best experience possible for the students and the families. And it can be such a tolling like experience because there is like a lot of like emotion that goes into the day besides being physically exhausted from going for multiple hours.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's honestly so interesting to see how fast you can bond with a group of people that all have like a similar goal and a similar mindset. So like welcoming yourself into that environment and like letting everybody's like positivity bounce off of you, or like lifting people up when they're starting to like get tired or be like, oh, like I just want to go to bed. It's like, no, it's okay. We can keep going. We have stuff to do. But yeah, that's very cool. And what would you kind of say the responsibilities of being like an orientation leader is, whether it be like when the families and the students are present, or like at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day when you're getting everything ready or cleaning up for like the next day?
I think something really important to keep in mind is that while the job is super fun and, you know, you're going to love the whole time of it, you also have to remain professional because this is a job. So you have to, you know, have good, like appropriate, like demeanor, speaking, everything like that. So as long as you like maintain being professional, it'll go great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, like Ange said, you do have to maintain that professional demeanor about you, but you also want to make sure that everybody's having a good time, or, you know, everybody's getting excited, but they're also getting the information that they need. Because like Ange said, it is a job. As fun as it is a job that you hold on campus. So it's important to remind yourself of that, because you're going to meet like hundreds of people. You'll be, it's kind of crazy the amount of people that you're going to encounter through this position. So just kind of finding that balance of making sure that you're having fun and like your groups are having fun and they're getting excited, but also making sure that they're getting the information that they need. They're prepared for what they're transitioning into.
And going off of that, like making sure everyone else around you is doing good, but then also making sure that you're doing good and taking care of yourself, making sure that your team is, you know, everyone's eaten, had their water, you know, that everyone's like in a good mind space, because like we've been saying, it is really exhausting. So if someone's having like, you know, a bad mental health day, and you can just be like, all right, just, you know, take a couple minutes. It's okay. Like I got your group for a few minutes, go do whatever. Which I think is also really special, that orientation leaders, we all have each other's back, even though we've known each other for like 5 days, and then we like go into our orientation days, we're like, oh, okay, you know, whatever you need, I got you. And everyone's so supportive, and you never feel like you're alone with them. Yeah. Like you never feel like an outsider, because you just get like wrapped up in everyone so quickly, and everyone just so inviting.
Yeah.
So it's great.
I'd also say there's a lot of behind the scenes work that we do that you don't really realize until you're in the position. So we have that first like 5 or 6 days of training where we're learning all the information about Sacred Heart as a whole, to make sure that we're ready to either answer everybody's questions or be able to direct them to the right person so that they can get that question answered. All the bags that they get, we stuff everything with all those papers and the flyers and the free gifts that they get and stuff like that. And, you know, it can be a really tough couple of days when you're doing stuffing because it's an all-day thing. But as long as the orientation leaders bring the energy and everybody has a good attitude about it and they're all working hard, you kind of don't realize that you're doing, like, you're just stuffing like hundreds of bags. And then we set everything up every morning, clean it all up that night. Yep. So it is a lot of behind the scenes and we do all registration, make sure everybody's, you know, has their name tags, their bags and stuff like that. They're checked in, they're good to go. So as much as it is the being at the welcome gate and jumping around and getting everybody excited and having a group and, you know, talking with parents and stuff like that, it also is a lot of behind the scenes prep work that we have to do as well.
It's a lot of like random little things that you might not think about, but everyone has like their little designated tasks. Everyone is like by day, like 2 or 3, when you got to do name tags, you have it down pat. Same thing with registration. You set it up, take it down in like 10 minutes. It's all good. But like that kind of thing is a bit like you don't realize that we do all that too. But it's never like, it gets easier as the days go on too, because you get into the good flow of it. You just kind of know what to set up, know what to do.
Yeah. It brings a lot of like time management too, especially within your day, because you know you have to do all of these certain responsibilities like at a certain time to keep everything flowing smoothly. So like having a good team that you can like rely on to even though you literally met them maybe like 4 days ago, have never spoken to them before. And you could just be like, okay, like we got to get this done and we have places to be, things to do, people to see. We got to get a move on. But yeah, I feel like that's with everything too, with leadership roles. Like everyone sees like the front aspect of it, but there's so much behind the scenes work that like nobody has any idea of like that had gone on. But it really shows like the leadership aspect of it. I feel like this role is such a strong leadership position that's very valued on campus. So like being able to be in this position really like kind of holds like a high standard in the eyes of like the people that are already here and like the people that are coming in. So so outside of being an orientation leader for those 3 weeks, the program has a few other things that you guys kind of get involved in, which is pre-fall and then the first year experience program. So I kind of wanted to touch upon those a little bit as well, because I think a lot of people don't realize that being an orientation leader goes farther beyond the 3 weeks in the summer. Like you are locked in for a few months there. And it really never leaves you. Like I feel like the hat like always kind of the bow always stays on. The bow and khakis. Not the hat, the bolo and the khakis all stay on all year long. And like the skills that you learn really just go through with you. But for like the actual physical events where you're still showing up with that name tag and, you know, that name and label as an orientation leader, do you guys want to talk about pre-fall and like what responsibilities the orientation leaders have when it comes to pre-fall?
Pre-fall I feel like pre-fall and move-in are kind of like a mini orientation in and of itself, because we come, we help move in all the students that are here for pre-fall programs, and then throughout they kind of have their days with pre-fall. We're doing training for FYE, and then at night when they're all done with their programs, we host events for them. There's always something fun going on, free food. We've had like inflatables and stuff like that. So it's a long couple of days, definitely, because you're getting ready to go back to school. You're also moving your stuff in wherever you are, like wherever you're living. And you're going through training, you're moving other people in. But it's really cool because you'll see some of your students from orientation and you'll be like, oh my gosh, how was your summer? I'm so excited to see you. So it's really cool to have to kind of come back and be able to see them start, like finally get to be on campus and start being here. So that's really cool.
And in terms of FYE, that's like the big like classroom perspective of the transition from high school to college. And I like to just call it like college 101 when I describe it, because you just learn how to cope and deal and go through the motions of being in a completely new place for the first time, because you might have questions about how do I do my laundry? How do I get my schedule? How do I like do anything basically? And orientation leaders are paired with a faculty member who are able to, assist them with, teaching the class. And we're given a whole workbook for the students, and we have like different tasks that we complete each week, like what we're going to focus on that week, whether it be time management, budgeting. We have a little mini project at the end for them to do. And I feel like it's just a really good way to get more accumulated onto the campus and about the 8 to 10 week program that FYE is. And I feel like it's a really good way to like get more comfortable with another orientation leader and have almost like a mentor, because I see it as like a mentorship as well, because you get really close with those students too.
Yeah, I think it's also really cool to have that relationship with those students because, it is their first couple of weeks on a college campus and there's so much that they have to get used to. Like even Ange said, like learning how to do laundry can be kind of overwhelming when you're in a new situation like that. And you don't want to ask your professor something like that because, so having that student who's been through it, who knows what you're going through, who knows kind of their way around campus and how to navigate that transition, I think is super important because you become a resource for those students throughout those first few weeks and also just throughout the year too.
Yeah, it's good to view, like when I was in my FYE class, I just felt good that I was able to relate to an upperclassman because they were in the same situation I was. They, were scared, they were nervous, and they were going through the motions of it all. And that made me feel a lot more comfortable being able to like have someone older on campus that I could talk to about problems, or if I was struggling, I didn't know what to do, where to go. It's such a good resource to have. And I would definitely recommend like utilizing your FYE instructor like as often as you need.
Yeah. I think it's like, it's cool that Sacred Heart has the program, like the first year experience program within like really prioritizing making sure students are adjusting well. Because, you have so many students that are coming in, you can't really do like in focusing on every single student, like on a grand scheme of things, but breaking it down, giving them like 30 people classrooms of giving them students who are going through the exact same thing as them. Like this is such a tangent, but I didn't realize that like college classes weren't by like grade or age when I first came in, because I was in math and it was like I had a junior sitting next to me and I was like, what's going on?
It's
what's happening here? So like having that class with everybody that's also still adjusting, and like you said, having somebody who went through it very recently. I had this like conversation with an FYE instructor a little while ago where they were telling me that it was really great that they had students in this classroom, because you're not going to like really relate to somebody who's probably gone to college like 10 plus years ago and is like, oh, when I was in college, like I did blah, blah, blah. Because you feel like that disconnect between the two of them. So having somebody who's within their 4 years still, like being able to relate and give you some like experiences and like relate to you and like an emotional aspect.
Yeah.
It's like honestly very smart of the school to do that.
Yeah. I definitely feel like it makes it a lot less intimidating because people see an adult and they're like, oh, professor, like automatically like that's a professor. I got to, be respectful, everything like that. But I think having another student up there, whether like, 18 to 21 years old, like you feel a lot more comfortable with the fact that that there's like someone who out there who's like an advocate for you and they are there for you. They're a good resource. And it definitely made me feel a lot less like intimidated to talk to a professor about anything like that. Because oftentimes they'll just have you like call them by their first name, the professor. And like it'll just be like, oh, Miss whoever, like, oh, call me like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like that helps just students feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think that having a student instructor also, like Ange said, makes the students more comfortable. It also just has that resource. It provides a resource for those students because we've all been through it. We all had our struggles throughout freshman year and just throughout college in general. But I think the student assistant, FYE assistant, really just helps those students in your class kind of get used to being here. Throughout FYE, you have 2 one-on-one meetings. You meet with your student assistant first, and then the actual instructor. So it's kind of just a way to check in, like, how are you doing? How are you doing with your classes, roommates? Are there any issues that you want to talk about or that you need help with? And it just, I think it kind of facilitates that transition a little bit better. And I mean, throughout FYE, you do like your first presentation, and it's usually something simple, but it definitely kind of forces the student to take that time and reflect on how they're acclimating to the campus.
It's such like a critical course that I think a lot of like, and honestly, like when I was a freshman doing FYE, like by like the 5th week, I'm like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why am I still here?
Exactly.
But like the more I think about it, like as like a junior, senior, I'm like really grateful that we had it because it gave me a class where, one, I didn't have to worry about like, am I not going to understand something? Like, is there going to be something assigned that's going to be really hard? Like, it really just gave me a time where I go in for an hour and kind of learn more about the school and feel a little bit more connected with the school, like each week. So I think a lot of the freshmen, like you see it, like when they're in there, you just have to be like, I know you're tired. Like, like I had an FYE class at like 2 on a Friday. I was like, I know you're tired. I know, like, especially right before Columbus break, you want to go home. Stick with me for a little bit, like it's gonna be fine. But yeah, I think both of those, it really does show like you're with them for the whole kind of like their transition, especially for like orientation. When you're somebody's leader, you're with them for a few hours.
Yeah.
Like you are a face to them. Like you always say that they can reach out to you. For like that FYE person, you're with them for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You're with them for that entire first adjustment period. So you really become like a very like familiar and hopefully like welcoming like person for that student who maybe they're struggling or maybe they just like want to know that they have someone in their corner. So those are cool. So there's a lot going on with this orientation program, and I'm sure that especially because you've had 3 years and I feel like you've done it forever as well, both of you. When I think of orientation, I think of the two of you. So do you have like a favorite kind of like memory that you had either being on like an orientation day, maybe doing FYE, or like during bonding? Anything that like sticks out to you when you think of orientation?
Roy.
Yes.
If you remember Roy, he is the absolute best. So Roy would come in, I think, the 2nd or 3rd day of training. And after that day, we were a changed group.
Yeah.
Like every year Roy has come, it's just been a completely different group after his visit because he does such an amazing job of just team integration that I've never seen before. And he's so fun. Everyone loves him. He comes every year. He's just a hit. So every time he comes, that's always like such a good memory of mine because everyone has so much fun with him.
Yeah,
you know, everyone loves
really
him.
brings something out in everybody else. Like the little challenges he makes us do. I think like one of them was he would throw like number pads all over, all over outside, and we had to go and run and pick them up and then put them in order. And or one time we had to do it without talking and stuff like that, and just like all these little things. And
the big puzzle.
Yeah. And in the time when you're doing it, you're like, why can't I talk to these people? Like, this is so stupid. Like, this would be so much easier if I could just be like, no, I have number 1. Like, that needs to go over here. But then afterwards, he leaves and it's like, whoa.
Yep.
What just happened?
I see why he did that. It's like magic. It's crazy.
Literally magic.
Yeah.
And even like, like a little task, like, oh, get in birthday order, but you can't speak. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to do that if I can't vocalize when my birthday is? But it's like, it just underlying teaches amazing teamwork skills, amazing bonding skills. It's unmatched. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Shout out Roy.
We love Roy.
Shout out Roy.
We literally love him.
I think all the bonding activities that we do are just so great. Like if you think you do a lot of icebreakers when you're a freshman at orientation, I guarantee the orientation leaders have done way more because the first day, all icebreakers, and like every day throughout that, especially that first week, you're doing icebreakers. All the icebreakers that they're making you do, they've done too. So it's just kind of cool to be on that end of it and get to know everybody that way, and just all the activities that we've done. I mean, even like, I feel like even when we're not doing anything, if we have the night off, like everybody's still hanging out. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of crazy how everybody gets so inseparable and just like wants to hang around everybody. So it's just cool because in June, you're really the only people on campus. Like,
It's
campus
really
is
fun.
yours. You're all living together in one of the dorms, and you're just there. And it's it's definitely a really interesting experience to be, like, campus is alive but empty.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of cool to just experience that and experience campus in a different way. And I think that's probably my favorite part.
Yeah.
Something I really loved about our team this year was that, like, we would give them the night off some nights because it would be like a long training day, and we're like, all right, go to bed early. But then, like, would we ever? No, because someone would send a text in the group and be like, all right, going to the beach, who wants to come? And then everyone would go to the beach, or everyone would go get ice cream, or meet up in the common room for a movie, everything like that. So even if we've been together all day, we're not sick of each other yet. And we won't get sick of each other, period.
Yeah.
Which I just think is such a special bond, because I feel like it's so hard to compare that to other teams. Like, you know, it just stands out to me how it's like you just want to be around each other all the time.
Yeah.
Because you just give each other so much energy.
Yeah, and it's also really cool to see the effect that you have on people on campus, because you see those students for a couple hours that first day, and then the next day you do it all over again, and you're with the parents, or you have another group of students. And so as you kind of go through those couple of weeks, you meet so many people, you're with so many different students. It's kind of hard to realize how many people you have affected in some way. And so I always love those moments where a student will reach out to you and be like, hey, like, you inspired me to do this, or like you made me feel really, really comfortable to, you know, reach out to the people that live on my floor and stuff like that. And so it's really cool. The first year I was an orientation leader, one of my students actually applied the next year. And so last year she was on the team with us. And so it was really cool to see. It was kind of a full circle moment because she talked about me in her interview. So like that was really cool to hear, and just to see how I impacted her in a way that inspired her to do something. And I think that nobody really talks about that aspect of it, because you do meet so many students and you do meet so many families and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see the effect you have on people.
Even knowing that you helped like one student, like that alone just makes you feel so good. And just like, if you are that person for them, like that is just so rewarding on its own. Just being like a mentor and advocate for somebody else on this campus who might feel like they're not, you know, ready, or they're just like, they just don't know where to begin. It's always so good to just be that person for them.
Yeah. And even like the smallest thing could really impact someone, and like knowing that you helped alter someone's experience is like so rewarding.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so nice. So also, before we kind of get into the end questions, as an orientation leader, being a part of that program, being an FYE instructor, what do you think like the most valuable kind of skill that you like gained while being like a leader on campus and being like a mentor for younger students?
I feel like I really was able to work on my own confidence, delegating tasks, team integration, because as like this past year I was one of the chairs, and that's like kind of difficult having like kind of like, you know, you have your orientation groups, but then you also have like the orientation leader group. So it's like you have to figure out how to work 40 people in together. And if you don't have a good team dynamic, then it's really rough and you don't know kind of how to come back from that. So learning how to integrate a team together through, again, bonding, everything like that, it was like a great experience. And it definitely helped me be more confident in myself, carry myself better, even public speaking, just speaking in front of a group. Just, I feel like the way I've carried myself transitionally from freshman year to senior year is like beyond different. And a lot of it I contribute to this program.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think that throughout this program, I learned the importance of adaptability, because, you know, you'll have one thing planned, you'll be doing it one way, and it'll change like that. And you just got to be quick on your feet and readjust and kind of not let it hold you back. And so I think that was also like an important life lesson just to learn, because there are many instances where something will change, or we have to adjust the way we're doing something, and you just have to roll with the punches and go for it. So I definitely think that also was a big thing I learned.
Definitely.
Yeah, those are great. Thank you. Well, guys, thank you for sharing all of your experiences with the orientation and FYE program. So kind of to wrap everything up, I wanted to do 2 different pieces of advice. So my first question for you guys is advice for those who come across this and are looking to maybe they want to join the program next year. Applications come out around like March, February, kind of around there. What would be like your advice for somebody kind of looking to take that step and maybe joining the team?
I'd say be yourself, and know who you are as a person, and just be able to showcase who you are and what you can bring, but also be able to acknowledge your weaknesses or where you kind of fall short, and acknowledge that while you may not be the best at something, somebody else on the team would be able to help you with that. And so I definitely say being yourself, but also if you want it, don't give up on it, I could have just, not applied the next year because I was like, oh, they said no to me, like, not gonna happen. But I'm so, so grateful that I didn't let that hold me back, and I decided to go for it one last time, because here I am 2 years later, and I couldn't imagine my college experience without being part of the orientation program.
Definitely. I would say if you have like an inkling that like, oh, this could be something I want to do, just take out the application, take it out, give it a look through. And because student life we're not looking for just one like copy of like, 40 people. Like, we're all completely different personalities. Now, like, not everyone is a bubbly extrovert who loves to talk to people. A lot of people are introverts. A lot of people are theater people. We might have athletes. We don't look for just one kind of person. We look for all these different personalities and what you really can bring to the table. So if you have any kind of potential interest in it, I would rather just take out the application, because my biggest piece of advice always is do it and know versus don't do it and never know. So I always just say just go for it.
It's a very, very valid point. No, just do it, as Nike would say. I've definitely said that already on my podcast somewhere else, but that's okay. And finally, because we might get some freshmen here watching to see what some of their orientation leaders might look like, what would be your advice to people coming in?
I always say that everybody's in the same boat. It can be very overwhelming when you're on campus for the first time and you have that orientation leader that's shouting at you at 8 o'clock in the morning to get excited and you're going to have a great day and stuff like that. And they're going to make you do silly things. You're going to be doing silly icebreakers in front of a random group of people that you don't know. I just say, remember that everybody's in the same boat. Everybody is here for the first time. This is the first time that they're on a college campus as a college student. It's they're here with people they don't really know. So everybody's in the same boat. So if you don't let that hold you back, you're going to get the most out of the experience.
I would say just take it day by day. It's not going to be a linear path. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have perfect days. It's all just going to be a big wave. You just got to go with the flow. Like, just, things are going to happen. You just have to get accumulated to it and get used to it. And then with your experience and as time goes on, it does get better. You get more comfortable. You learn so much about yourself even just being in college. And after like that first semester, first year, like, you got it. Like, it's really just getting through like the big transitional period of that first semester. That's probably the most intimidating, but just taking it day by day is like try not to look at it as like a big picture, because then thinking about it like that, you're going to get too overwhelmed. So just every day is a little adventure.
Yeah. I like the quote where it's like, don't look at the whole staircase, just look at the first step. And then just keep going.
I like that.
Isn't that fun?
I do like that.
Yeah. I should just mic drop it here. Just hi. Just kidding. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing your orientation leader information with me and everybody watching.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so that is the last informational video that I have for everybody. If you want more information about the orientation program, or if you want to learn or see like any pictures from the bonding, or just kind of get like more visuals on what they were talking about, at Shoot Orientation.
At Shoot Orientation.
Plug that Instagram handle.
Shameless
You
plug.
can go. It's never shameless. We just throw it out there. Whatever. So you guys can go there for any more information. And I hope you guys really enjoyed everything that, this podcast has put out. And I have one more episode lined up for you guys. So until then, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And I will see you next week for the last episode ever, which is so weird.
Wow.
Anyways, bye guys.